the judge did look at the evidence. I said, look, I'm not paying your licence under Section 15, Article 3 of the Terrorism Act. And they went through the procedure. I got the court summons, went to court. They asked me if I was guilty. I said, no, I'm not guilty of having an appropriate licence, because the licence isn't appropriate, because I'll be funding terrorism, because I know the BBC's covered up the true events of the day. And eventually we arrive here today, and the result has been, I have to say, a fair judge in my opinion, that I have not been convicted. I have no fine. Court costs £200, which you guys have very generously donated to, and I have to behave myself and get a TV licence, of course, which I'll be running down the post office tomorrow to buy. But hopefully we've set a little precedent here where we might encourage people to go and do the same thing, and you know, go to their police, tell them about today, give them the evidence. West Sussex Police have said they're investigating it, which they're obliged to do, because the BBC had prior knowledge of a terrorist event, which under, I think it's Section 38 of the Terrorism Act, they should have reported, which they didn't. And they've since given us this impossible flannel about World Trade Center 7 collapsing due to an office fire, which even in the NIST report says fell at free fall speed for 8 floors in 2.5 seconds. Now that is absolutely impossible without a controlled demolition being involved. Absolutely impossible. There's no arguments around it. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise, because they're saying Isaac Newton is wrong.
Why did he do it for the TV licence with BBC? Because primarily Jane Stanley in 9/11 from the BBC reported 23 minutes before World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed that it had actually fallen. So that indicated some prior knowledge that the BBC had in terms of the events of 9/11. And we've never had a satisfactory explanation from the BBC as to how they had that prior knowledge and made the mistake of announcing the fall of the tower before it actually did.
I'm Peter Drew. I'm representing architects and engineers for 911Truth as the UK facilitator. Today I was going to give evidence as part of myself and 2 other individuals back in 2011 lodged some official complaints with the BBC about 2 of the documentaries that they showed in 2011 as part of the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And the BBC, as Ian Henshaw has just described, they have very strict requirements through their Royal Charter and their agreement and their editorial guidelines, where they have to present information that is impartial and accurate, and they are required to correct any mistakes that they make. And one of the very important pieces of evidence that we were going to present today was in 2007, the BBC, in one of their documentaries, suggested that Building 7 did not come down at free fall speed, and said that the scientists and the architects who were suggesting that it had come down at free fall speed were wrong. But then in 2008 we had the official investigators who came out and actually then said, well, no, Building 7 did come down at free fall speed, which is a huge statement to make, because we know that it can only come down at free fall speed through controlled demolition. So the BBC had made a very, very big mistake in 2007 by saying that freefall had not occurred.
The BBC was incompetent, verging on dishonest. Oh, let's rephrase that, dishonest. I was the leading author on 9/11 when they did their Conspiracy Files programmes. I never had a phone call from them. Now, you know, they might have disagreed with me, they might have disliked me, but as they're paid by the public to investigate impartially and give a full account of what happens, and if they're doing a film about so-called conspiracy theories, then that obliges them to talk to anybody who's, you know, in the position I was. I'd been serialised in the Daily Mail. Instead they got some guys from America who had some pretty cookie ideas and presented them to the public as the face of the 9/11 investigators, who they call conspiracy theorists.
You've published 2 books on 9/11, is that right?
Yeah, 9/11 Revealed, which was serialised in the Daily Mail and sold tens of thousands of copies, and 9/11 The New Evidence, which is the update on that book, which was a very detailed look into the paper trail, particularly of the 9/11 attacks and the role of the FBI and the CIA in facilitating the 9/11 attacks.
and yet the BBC had no interest in talking to you.
They had no interest in talking to me. They didn't even phone me up. They didn't email me. Even the people who made one of the propaganda films, Flight 93, they spent 3 hours talking to me. They didn't take a blind bit of notice of anything I said, but they did go to the trouble of phoning and talking. The BBC had a lot of resources. They don't want to know. They were grossly dishonest in their investigations of the 9/11 attacks, and that's what I was here to say to the court today.
Unfortunately, the court today, the judge didn't let us demonstrate all the evidence. We had some very good witnesses: Tony Farrell, former intelligence officer for South Yorkshire Police; Niels Harrit, eminent scientist from Copenhagen; Ray Savage, former counter-terrorism officer. Who else am I leaving out? Peter Drew, wonderful chap, coordinated the campaign against the BBC, trying to find out about Building 7, which they refused to talk about. Adrian Mallet, former firefighter, engineer. I had a good load of witnesses lined up, but we weren't allowed to present them. That said, the judge has seen the evidence. He said he's seen the evidence, so we now know that for a fact that one judge in this country is very aware of what happened on 9/11, and I have no conviction.
Do you have the judge's name, please?
Judge Stephen Nichols, I believe.
Oh.
Do you know him?
Oh, yes.
Yes. No, a nice chap, it has to be said. It has to be said.
Yes.
And towards the end of the case, for anyone who wasn't in the room, I did kick off a little bit because, I mean, it does come down to a question of morality. Do you keep funding these bloody paedophile rings at the BBC? I know this is it's sub judice, but I think it's been fairly well established that's what's going on. And do we fund an organisation that tells us the impossible, that Building 7 fell because of an office fire? It's utter crap, and we should stop paying them. Go to your police station, go to your lawyer, wherever you have to go. I wouldn't bother petitioning your MPs, they're a complete shower of shit in my opinion. But go to the police, tell them. Sussex Police has said it's with divisional intelligence. We'll get it to other divisional intelligence as well, wherever you live. Get them there and do your best, you know, because it's not an imprisonable offence, TV licensing. And I got the lowest possible punishment today. I didn't get convicted. The judge took the stuff seriously, and so he should, because you can't get any more serious than Isaac Newton. And you know, it's an immutable law of science, and the BBC have been lying. And if they want to take me to court for saying that they're liars, fine, we'll go back.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.